Good morning, supervisors, guests, and staff. Would you please do roll call? We have 18 present, we have 3 absent, we have a majority, so our meeting will continue. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Of the United States. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Vergowe and a second by Supervisor Stillman to approve the agenda. All in favor, please vote your ballot. So we do have a majority and we will move on. Are there any corrections or additions?
Just wait. Someone's pushing.
Hang on, don't vote till I tell you. By Supervisor Draheim. Vote your ballot. Absent, we have a majority vote, so the minutes have been approved. Are there any petitions? Okay. Moving on, public participation. And we'll have the presentation of the Office of Corporation Counsel by Kimberly Tenerelli, who is our Corporation Counsel.
Me to do a presentation just about what our office does. I've worked with many of you, so this might be old news for those of you that don't know what we do. Hopefully this will enlighten you. Okay, so of court, the things that we do in the court system that I actually have mental commitments and extensions on those mental commitments, CHIPS and TPR cases, and a variety of other responsibilities not So for child support, I work directly with the child support. And Sutine and Mary. Basically, child support cases, so if somebody is separated or divorcing or never married but now they need services, we will establish the case. So evidence on both sides, and then I present what we think, whoever should pay child support, pay child support. File actions to compel if they're not coming forward to establish. And they're not paying child support, we bring them into court to have them explain to the court why they're not paying, and the court can set conditions that they to jail, but the court can. That's kind of in flux right now with the with a new judge. Has that been finalized with the court commissioner? No, getting a blank look. So we're thinking like 4 hours a week. Vacations, which means if somebody has a job and they're making a lot more support. And I do work closely with staff. Oftentimes these are cases where people are not represented. Don't know what they're doing in court. And so it's a delicate balance. A litigant. And the child support agency works really well, working with both parties, the payor and placement cases. Guardianship cases are cases when a person really is not competent into a car crash, have a brain injury, not their own person. Guardian, or it could be an older person, later stages of life, maybe dementia. They can't make their own decisions anymore, so we come to court to have them appointed a guardianship. Because you have family members fighting for what they think is best. Might not be the best person. Corporate guardian, which means they don't know any of the parties and they can make kind of a decisions being with their heart being in it versus a family member. So once a guardianship is in place, then if they're in a nursing home, or even sometimes people are can be hotly contested with family members. They don't want them to go to Judge Freilich said really it best on one of the cases recently is that we're going to take that decision away from you and I'm going to make that decision. It's a hard one, and they're kind of gut-wrenching cases, so the judge made the decision. Loving that individual to really looking at what's best for that individual. So then for the protective placements, those are reviewed every 12 months. Those are called Watts reviews. So then we have to start kind of from the beginning and prove our case up again. We might have to get a doctor. They are not able to go home. They are in. We had one individual recently who wanted to go home and take care of her husband. Her husband was independent, living on her own. She needed a ton. We go to a hearing for that because she just thinks that she should be going home and taking care. Joanne and her staff, and with or Kim. Another type of so these are individuals that might have a So typically what happens is something happens where law enforcement is called. It's not a criminal action. The person is just doing something. Law enforcement says there's no odor, they hadn't taken any drugs. They're just homicidal comments or homicidal comments. So they take them, they confer with Human Services. If Human Services agrees to they first have to get evaluated physically before they can be placed on for a strict 48 hours that we have to hear the case in front of the court. That was a struggle when we had one judge. Now with the two judges, they are giving us a 3 o'clock time slot every day, which a probable cause hearing for those types of cases. And if we in a 90-day settlement agreement, which means they're agreeing to do something back into treatment, and then they do very well. They still need aftercare follow-up, and so those cases we do. Those types of cases are reevaluated every year, and if the department, the behavioral health unit thinks that we need to continue on with the extension, then they'll follow. Also are hotly contested. We have people contesting those every year that are chronically mentally ill. But sometimes it requires more than that, and in this county that the doctors can testify via phone because they're very difficult to get here, anywhere actually. There's a shortage of question it. Our public defenders have been very good, so they testify by phone. If they're not, if they don't go to court, Lisa in our office basically handles them from beginning to end. It's just a lot of paperwork. I review the paperwork. The CHIPS and TPR cases, those are cases that I just got. I keep saying just got, but it's been like 2 or involving kids. Basically, the kids are in need of protection or services. Either the parents just need a little help, or there's some serious issues with the parents. Addiction with drugs or alcohol, that they're in the with the social workers. We get them either by a TPC, a temporary placement order, those or they refer cases to them, they get filed, and we go to court that way. Then it's 30 days before they go to court. TPC or TPR oftentimes years at their conditions. It goes on to a TPR case, and those cases they take a lot of effort because you have to look back at all of the records and present all of that case to typically TPR. I work very close with the social workers and the supervisors. We're always jointly policies. There's been turnover with supervisors. Ways that we could work the policies and procedures, and the supervisors Chu and now George any procedure changes that I suggest or recommend, and we work really well together. I've attended over 182 child support cases since January of 21st to the end of the year. For guardianships, it's been about 30 emergency detention hearings and 50, or excuse me, which means some of those resolved in a 90-day settlement agreement or were dropped. And for CHIP, cases take quite a bit of the staff and my really doing the best we can for those kids. Other responsibilities outside of the court proceedings. A peak of things that we work on, and then all of a sudden so a large percentage of my time also reviews contracts. So I review over 150 contracts a year. Long in 6-point print. So they can be very time consuming. The other responsibilities that I end up having to do research because I don't know them off the top of my head, or they happen so infrequently that by the next time the issue comes up, I forget. When I started here, I've asked other corporation councils, when do you for corporation council? So over the past 2 years, a significant amount of time as I call it, we were doing policies and procedures. We had as soon as we made a policy or procedure, we were presenting it and they changed. So we were really working on that for a long period of time. Even there on those types of things. Obviously, Michelle works much more on those issues. I'll do some research and say, hey, Michelle, did you see this? I should have mentioned, Rhonda in our office handles CHIPS and TPR cases and does an excellent job keeping me on task because there's implementation. Oftentimes I'll write policy for a department and then to go to committee. And I was trying to think this morning, except for 2 really, veterans I really haven't worked much with, very self-sufficient. Closely with them, but for the administrator, Todd and I work daily together, it seems like, on issues that come up. Recently, 4-H, the ARPA child care, to protective placements. Some contracts that are pretty significant and involve not involving others. The county clerk, I asked Beth today, like, there's just so much to keep in my head. What do I do with you? Came up last year, the year before, with the emergency management with Bernie is typically contracts. The highway There's always something with highway going on. Typically, it's intergovernmental shed that came up recently. So Brian and I work well together. IT policies and can't remember the official name. Planning and zoning. That is something that I work on with the Sheriff's Department and the Treasurer's Office. But I end up in court with those, and a couple of times we've had a battle, but not too many times. And we did have that contaminated closely with Matt and his new role. So I really feel that our department it's like human resources where you just work with everybody. Unlike the courts, they're very focused, but we really work with everyone. I don't really know. I don't probably, but I try, and there's certain trainings that I attend every year. Multidisciplinary, so social a really good and it gives us an opportunity to work together when you normally don't. I mean, it's really hard to work with the judges on of impropriety or appearance of neutrality. So we got to work some things out, or so I thought. Also another conference just for the corporation councils that they do on a different time. It's like every huge conference that I attend yearly. The issues aren't relevant to the attorneys. Excuse me. Later time. And many of solid days at this conference, so we can pick and choose what's important for us. HIPAA Cow Conference, all things HIPAA. I work with Lynn Brenner, and the three of us generally attend that conference together virtually. Perspective, and that's a very and John is getting on board very quickly with that, so that's a complicated area that we work with. Last they range from anything to guardian ad litem trainings to I jump on those because something has come up that I don't know much about and I need to learn it quickly, and so I attend a training on that. I work with, without Lisa and Rhonda, I couldn't do what I do. They keep me on. They are just indispensable, and without them, there is no doubt we would need a second attorney in that office. So although I'm speaking just as much about the cases that they work on, oftentimes asking what's happening with so-and-so. About my support staff, I really, really appreciate them. And they're in the face, always willing to help, and if I'm not around and they don't know the answer to the question, they get right back to you. So if anyone has any questions,
Do your ballot.
I'm sorry.
We have a couple here.
Oh, hold on.
Okay.
There, try that.
All right, Supervisor Steer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a two-part question. Significant.
Holds we take to a variety of locations. We take mental health. It just depends on who has a bed available at the time. Bed available, law enforcement's ready to go, and then we get the call. Working diligently to find a place. Oftentimes, if they're out of beds, they'll go to Winnebago Mental Health. That's the facility of last resort. To take the cases per statute. What was the second part of your question?
Have we
We saw a lot of cases. There was like 3 or 4 in a day. It honestly was a full moon, not exaggerating. And it was right around the house. Increase, you have drinking, you have families, and then it kind of lulls, like right now we're in a lull. We have, once kids went back to school, typically 12 and older, although we've had some as young as 7 and 8. That has clearly increased since kids have gone back.
You and your staff do?
Thank you.
Supervisor.
You and your department do is truly impressive. My question is not so much policy, but more, how do you and your staff with be healthy?
Drink? No, kidding.
All right. That explains a lot.
Honestly, I think we all have great family get-togethers where we go out to drink and just kind of let loose. We go out to lunch every once in a while, and by let loose, I'm not saying anything crazy. We're not dancing on courts outside of work, and we are very active outside of work. Lisa's involved in a ton of things. Rhonda's involved in helpful. Thanks.
Mr. Stillman?
Thank you. I just got 2 little questions. What does the acronym WATTS stand for?
I don't know what that stands for.
You do or don't? Okay.
We can look it up. I'll get back to you.
Oh, okay. Then on the last slide that you did like CLS training. What? Thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Huffberger?
Thank you. Be just for me, but I had no idea that I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't, and I really appreciate hearing what you've done. I think it's good for all of us as a team to know what really good, and just keep going. It really sounds good. Thank you.
Madam Chairman. And my question was about Watts, so that's been answered, but when do you find time?
Sometimes it's just late nights, but it all gets done. We do our. I had a 6-year anniversary earlier this month.
So in another 4 years,
Yeah, I should
you
have
will
it
know
down.
what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
That you do for us.
You're very
It's-
welcome.
It's invaluable. Thank you.
Supervisor Diedrich?
Somewhat excited because, like most of us, and do, so I appreciate that. But you kind of tired me out with listing all these things you were doing, so I'm going to have to find. You mentioned that you and your staff present both sides. Because they don't trust you to be impartial, or how does that play out?
Absolutely. There are attorneys that come in. Unfortunately, the people that I'm out, because the only time I'm involved is when they're asking for services. Monies from a federal or a state. But once in a while, I will get a case that has an attorney. And when I say present both sides, I pretty much say your expenses, and based on this and who has placement of the children, that's how much child support we should ask for. I don't get into placement. I don't argue for attorneys come into play when they want to argue about who should have the kids. I just the air, their standards as to what the child support should be based on.
All right, thank you. One last question. When parental rights
Well, there's a couple of things. There could be a guardianship put in place, which means background, typically the way background, they might still have but they still are involved in their lives. It's just in the kids' lives, they just can't take care of the kids 100%. With grandma and grandpa, and a guardianship provides more permanence. And they'll become clean, they'll really be an active be dismissed. Those are far and few in between, I have to admit, but sometimes they happen. Or by whoever has had them in their care. So typically it's foster parents who are godsends and angels. But oftentimes these kids are then adopted by
Supervisor Stillman?
Thank you. I got one other. Do you ever take any input from the children, where they would like to go or who they would like to be with? Anything like that?
It depends on their age. And so sometimes kids are very protective of will always get an attorney, whether it be a guardian ad litem if they're 12 and under, or an adversary counsel if they're 13 and older. And so the children want. If the kids are 12 and younger, the guardian ad litem argues for what's in their best interest, which might not be what the children want. Courts may ask them, you know, what do you it's based on their best interest. Recently, we've had some really protective kids of their parents, and they would rather live in a and are going to school. They're just really protective of their parents.
Thank you. Did the Watts question get answered? Because I just looked it up. I just want-
Yeah.
That was a precedent for the review for protective placement. So why you couldn't remember the acronym.
Yes, thank you. I should have known that. As soon as you started talking, I did know that. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much, and I can attest that they're long days. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Moving on to Resolution 20.
This committee to settle accounts not exceeding $10,000.
Supervisor Steer and a second by Supervisor Schwallenberg. And Supervisor Gens, would you speak to this resolution?
County Board by resolution authorize a committee account. And in our case here, it's this resolution to settle those accounts that are 10,000.
Seeing none, please vote your ballot. Nay, 2 absent. That has received a majority vote, so that resolution has been adopted. Moving
Authorizing
Berg.
Do workmen's compensation or and now are re-asking again. Self-insured.
Any questions? Thank you. We have 19 yes, 0 nay, 2 absent. That has received a majority. (2021-40).
resolution authorizing the amendment of the 2021 budget for an operating transfer to the highway fund.
Baraboo and a second by Supervisor Karth. And Supervisor
Over to David
all right.
and have him explain.
So over the last number of years, the highway department has had December 31st. So, as of December 31st, our long-term portion was the 2.7 million that is in the resolution. This started that up. That portion of a fund balance is non-spendable because it's already been used. Affect our fund balance policy from a perspective of our percentage. So we continue to be very strong in our general fund. Even with this transfer, balance and our policy requires 15. So this has really no impact. It's more of a cleanup from operations, and we've added some analyze what's happening, and we're working very closely, and Highway has been very useful in really working through from that perspective. We're looking to kind of clean up past so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Please vote your ballot. Absent, it has received the 2/3 vote, so that resolution has been adopted. Moving on to Resolution 2021-41.
Pedestrian lane facilities.
Motion by Supervisor Draheim and a second by Supervisor Vergowe. And Supervisor
This is just to clarify that we can fund so that it's just asking for their money, so it's just to clarify it all.
Are there any questions regarding? We have 19 yes, 0 nay. Moving on to supervisory reports. Please indicate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things. Human Services didn't meet this month, but just yesterday I listened to a webinar where the hospitalizations are up, but deaths are down. And other states to peak within the next week or two. They said that 40% and then when they're tested, they're or something, and the ideal capacity that they like a hospital to be if you're keeping up with the news, you're aware that too, because some of the people they can't send out of the hospital because there's no place to take care of them. And that's why this form of COVID is so infectious. Immunity that's not very providing a lot of protection right now. So vaccination is still encouraged. If you've watched the news, So I haven't school board meeting in Hilbert last night, and the superintendent said that they were, the school so our vaccination at the courthouse here will probably end the end of January because the group up in the air with that too. Our staff is contact tracing is probably not being done as much case comes in. I think anybody over 65, Bonnie said that they tried to do contact tracing on. Ash tree harvest has started on our northern property, and we've been at that for that we're talking about building. If you've been paying attention, I think said over 40% higher again. So we've had an employee that just retired, Mr. Have a lot of snow, so our tube hill hasn't been opened. So, but it's thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Schwallenberg. Supervisor Karff?
Hi, thank you. Two things. First of all, to is in the Appleton Area School District, and just to call out how things have changed with COVID. Case at home, as long as have a sibling with or a parent or somebody living in the home with a positive case. So also, if they're exposed and has COVID and but it has changed drastically. The second item that I just wanted to cover on today has nothing on our board, and we're going to be likely getting others back in 2020, 2018, and so forth. When COVID hit and everything went virtual, UW Extension put those trainings to get county officials workshop orientation training, things like that. It is to go to the all-day COWS seminar.
Thank you, Supervisor Karff. All right, moving on, any all right. If not, we'll move on to an appointment to the Vergowe to fill a vacancy left by Sue Lisowe with a term to expire January. Supervisor Diedrich to confirm this appointment. Are there any questions? That appointment has been confirmed. Also, reappointment of the county surveyor. Surveyor expires January 2024.
Give me a second, because it went one too far. So
Okay.
I have I need a motion in a second.
All right. Confirm this reappointment. Is there any questions? If not, please vote your ballot. Supervisor Stoffel, would you? Okay, we have 19 yes. Has been confirmed. We will have to go into closed session to
It's just telephone numbers. I don't know.
What's that?
It just says.
Yeah, can you unmute them? For those on the tele. Hi, Brian. And the other. We are join, or were you just going to end now? Contact you. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Thank you. Okay. All set then? All right.
Thanks for using.
All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Diedrich and a second by Supervisor Schwallenberg to go. Vote your ballot. Supervisor Schwallenberg, would you please vote, confirm? Okay, we have yes, 1 no, 2 absent.